Tuesday, the president waking up this morning at the White House, and there is plenty to get after. He's pointing a finger of blame at the Obama administration after the indictments in the Russia matter of last week, and questions anew about background checks. So as we say good morning, the gang's back together here in New York. I'm Bill Hammer, live inside of America's Newsroom. Welcome back.
Good to be back with you, Bill. All right, I'm Sandra Smith. The president did return home from the holiday weekend, finding protesters at the door, calling for action on gun laws in the wake of the Florida massacre. The White House already offering support for more extensive background checks. Meanwhile, Trump tweeting about Russian meddling in the election and giving Mitt Romney and his Senate run a big boost. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts is back with us as well this morning and live from the North Lawn. Good morning, John. What a weekend it was for the president.
Sandra, good morning to you. What a weekend it was and what a week it's going to be. Let's first of all unpack the endorsement of Mitt Romney that the president just made. And it reminds me of that famous line in Ghostbusters when Bill Murray said, "Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria." Here's what the president tweeted about Mitt Romney. Quote, "Mitt Romney has announced he's running for the Senate from the wonderful state of Utah. He will make a great senator and worthy successor to Orrin Hatch and has my full support and endorsement." To which Mitt Romney tweeted back, "Thank you, Mr. President, for the support. I hope that over the course of the campaign, I also earn the support and endorsement of the people of Utah." Just as a frame of reference, let's review the relationship these two men used to have. Watch here.
Here's what I know. Donald Trump is a phony, a fraud. His promises are as worthless as a degree from Trump University. He's playing the members of the American public for suckers. He gets a free ride to the White House, and all we get is a lousy hat.
The guy's a stone-cold loser. He choked, and when you're a choker, you can never give a choker a second chance. It's too important. A choker is a choker. You see it in sports. You see it in sports, folks. When the guy misses the kick, you get rid of him.
When the guy misses the kick, you get rid of him or you endorse him for the Senate in Utah. The president also, with his sights on the indictments announced against 13 Russians for interfering in the 2016 election, taking aim at President Obama and the Democrats, tweeting at length this morning about it. Quote, "There is no serious person out there who would suggest somehow that you could even rig America's elections. There's no evidence that that has happened in the past or that it will happen this time. And so I'd invite Mr. Trump to stop whining and make the case to get votes." That's the President Obama quote just before the election. That's because he thought crooked Hillary was going to win, and he didn't want to rock the boat. "When I easily won the Electoral College, the whole game changed, and the Russian excuse became the narrative of the Dems." The president seemed pleased with the indictments that the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein announced on Friday when he left for Florida, felt that they proved no collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. But over the weekend, as talk turned to whether or not Russia put its thumb on the electoral scale in the president's favor, his tone changed, lashing out on Twitter against the FBI, his known national security advisor, H.R. McMaster, Adam Schiff, the ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee, the media, even Oprah Winfrey, and the president adding another tweet just a short time ago as an exclamation point, "I have been much tougher on Russia than Obama. Just look at the facts. Total fake news." All that, and it's 9:04. Sandra?
You got to remind yourself of that sometimes, John. Well, the big talk in Washington this morning is new gun control. What's the White House? Where do they stand on this morning?
Well, the president officially supports a measure that has been floated by Senators John Cornyn of Texas and Chris Murphy of Connecticut, one that would strengthen the background check system simply by demanding that the states and the federal government do what they're supposed to do and funnel information up to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. Basically, what they're doing is they're saying that we just want to support the laws that are already in the books, adding nothing new here. Democrats, even some Republicans, want to change the law regarding assault-style weapons. It's not likely that the president is going to go down that road. He will be focused on the school shootings, by the way, this week. He's holding 2 listening sessions. He's got one planned for tomorrow that would include students and teachers from high schools. Now, the White House is trying to get some students and teachers from Parkland High School up here. They're not quite sure at this point how they can do it. And then on Thursday, he's going to be meeting with state and local officials. Of course, you've heard from a lot of students at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. They're not too happy with the president. But again, the White House does want to get a few students up here. But how to get them up, Sandra, is a little bit of a logistical challenge right now.
We'll see. John Roberts, thank you.
For more on all this now, I want to bring in Byron York, chief political correspondent, Washington Examiner. How you doing, Byron?
Good morning, Bill.
President Trump is not the only one blaming the last administration. And it's not just Republicans. Who's talking, Byron?
Well, we've heard some statements from Adam Schiff, the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. We've heard some statements from Bernie Sanders, the former Democratic presidential candidate. Remember, according to this indictment, this Russian effort started in 2014, more as an effort to sow discord in the American political system. 2015, the presidential race gets underway. They begin to target a number of, or support a number of people: Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, Jill Stein, Donald Trump. And then in 2016, when Donald Trump becomes the clear nominee, they support Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton. Now, there's one thing all these times have in common, which is Barack Obama was the president. And I think we're seeing not only President Trump, but a number of Democrats question whether the Obama administration did enough in real time to combat this Russian effort.
I could see why Bernie Sanders would be questioning it. I mean, he lost. He's probably
he's mentioned in the indictment, too.
Yeah. Adam Schiff said he brought up concerns early 2016. No one listened. Devin Nunes goes back to 2014. He said he was raising red flags then.
Yes, well, that's a little bit different in the sense that a number of lawmakers have said that they've been complaining about Russian intelligence operations for a long time, well before 2014, that the Russians have always tried to, and before that the Soviet Union had disinformation campaigns, have tried to mess with the American political system in various ways. But as far as this particular effort is concerned, remember, we've heard Adam Schiff say that he and Dianne Feinstein, who was the ranking Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee at the time, were saying, listen, we need to do something about this on October 7th in 2016. In other words, about a month before the election, the intelligence community released a statement saying that they thought Russia was behind the DNC hack. So this was something that was talked about. The question is, what did the Obama administration do behind the scenes in the world of intelligence to fight this?
Yeah, and we don't have that answer just yet. Obama told Putin to cut it out apparently 2 months before the election. Democrats consistently come back to this question. They don't believe President Trump is being tough on Russia. They don't believe he's responding appropriately. What is their measure of discontent on that reaction?
Well, this is a huge question that's really beginning to bubble up now. We saw it at the questioning of a number of intelligence chiefs the other day when Senator Reid, the Democrat, asked them all, has President Trump specifically assigned you, tasked you with stopping interference now? Because obviously Russians, we believe, will try to influence the 2018 election just like they tried to do in 2016. And the Intelligence Committee, intelligence chiefs couldn't say much. They said that the president had not specifically directed this, but it became clear that they're doing a lot of stuff. And I think it's probably true that the American intelligence community is doing more now to combat these Russian efforts, since we know about them, than they were doing in 2016.
Thank you, Byron. Byron York,
Thank
a
you,
little bit
Bill.
of analysis there in D.C. We will talk directly with the White House next hour. White House Principal Press Secretary Raj Shah is our guest live. We'll talk about the gun violence issue, the Russian meddling, and a lot more coming up at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. See how much you missed?
All of this as the White House gets back to work, and so do we.
Yes, we do.
All right, well, Florida students are taking their protests over gun violence to the state capitol today. They're boarding buses for Tallahassee this morning, immediately after a funeral for one of their classmates. Meantime, the suspect in last week's massacre, Nicholas Cruz, making his first court appearance yesterday afternoon. Steve Harrigan is in Parkland, Florida for us this morning. Steve, good morning.
Sandra, more than 100 students who survived the attack here last week are going to board charter buses and make that 400-mile drive to Tallahassee. They're going to meet with state legislators. There's also have a gun control rally in the Capitol as well. That trip has been planned for some time, as we've seen these anti-gun rallies spread from this city across the state. They're going to push for a comprehensive ban on assault rifles. It's not clear whether the conservative legislator could bite for that, but some conservative lawmakers have already said they are open to some changes, including most likely raising the age to buy rifles in Florida from 18 to 21, Sandra.
And Steve, we're learning more about the suspected killer as well.
Nicholas Cruz, 19 years old, charged with 17 counts of first-degree murder. He was in court yesterday, didn't say anything, but his medical records have been released. Some of those records deeply disturbing. A visit by a state social worker in 2016 said Cruz was at low risk of causing harm to himself or others. Yet some details from that visit disturbing. Mr. Cruz had cuts on both arms. Mr. Cruz said he wanted to buy a gun. It was unknown what Mr. Cruz wanted to buy that gun for. As far as the school here goes, it's likely to reopen on Friday for teachers. As far as students go, they are scheduled to come back for classes on Tuesday. Sandra, back to you.
Steve Harrigan, thank you.
10 minutes past the hour. President Trump saying he's been tougher on Russia than President Obama ever was. Well, does he need to do more? We'll debate that coming up momentarily here.
Plus, what a difference a coast can make. Record cold on one side of the country, record highs on the other. What's going on out there with this crazy weather?
Also from overseas, South Korea now addressing military drills with the United States that will take place after the Olympics. Will they happen? And what about that summit with the North? All that coming up.
That kind of a threat to the American people by a regime like this is not acceptable. And the president's meeting his responsibilities as commander-in-chief of asking our military and Secretary Mattis at the Defense Department to ensure we are prepared for anything.
Assured Guarantee, the proven leader in municipal bond insurance.
Well, snow is causing problems in the northwest United States. Utah's Department of Public Safety saying more than 450 crashes happened yesterday. In 4 incidents, highway patrol vehicles were hit. And along the Oregon coast, snow and icy roads are causing cars to slide off the highways. More rain and snow is expected for much of the west coast today.
You've been warned there. At home, now to overseas. Fox News alert now. Tensions rising on the peninsula in Korea. South Korea and the U.S. announcing plans to press ahead with joint military exercises, and Pyongyang firing back, saying it is fully ready for either war or dialogue. That's a quote. Michael Walsh, former Green Beret commander, former counterterrorism advisor to Vice President Cheney. How you doing, Michael? And good morning to you today.
Hey, thanks, Bill.
Do you think the Olympics changed anything in this relationship?
Well, you know, Bill, I can tell you one thing. Don't think for a second that the North Korean missile engineers and nuclear scientists were sitting around on vacation watching the Olympics on TV. They've been charging ahead to get the North Korean regime a functional ICBM that can hit anywhere in the world. So, you know, while on the one hand, I think, you know, this was an olive branch by the North Koreans, they're also using it as a propaganda ploy on their part. They've done this for years and years and years, and they will use this to buy time. So I am reassured to see the Trump administration, Secretary Mattis, and his counterpart in South Korea talking about resuming these military exercises on March 18th after the end of the Paralympic Games.
Well, James Mattis isn't going to back down. The Winter Games conclude this weekend, but Paralympics follow that. Jim, I don't think it's any coincidence that Rex Tillerson did this interview with 60 Minutes the other night. Just a quick clip of that. I'll ask you specifically about this comment here.
All right.
But you are willing to work with and potentially negotiate with Kim Jong-un?
Well, that's who we will have to work with to achieve this diplomatically. What we have to determine now is, are we even ready to start? Are they ready to start? And if they're not, we'll just keep the pressure campaign underway, and we will increase that pressure. And we are doing that every month. There are new sanctions rolled out. The world wants North Korea to change.
So I don't think this administration has softened at all. Listening to Tillerson and the president and James Mattis, as I mentioned ago.
No, that's right.
Do we think the South Korean leadership has gotten soft?
That's the worry. You know, President Trump, Tillerson, Mattis, they are moving forward with a maximum pressure campaign, and that's exactly what they should do. The fear is that South Korean President Moon, who is a liberal in his political system, wants to turn to what they call the sunshine policy, which is a resumption of aid. He has agreed, apparently, or is in talks to go to North Korea for a summit The last one was in 2007, didn't produce much, and that essentially they'll sit down and allow the North Koreans to sit them down, get bogged down in talks, and allow North Korea to buy more time. President Moon of South Korea is under a lot of criticism from the conservative side of his political body for being naive and allowing himself to be played by Kim Jong-un.
Okay, so if our rhetoric is still red hot, so is theirs. When North Korea says they are ready for dialogue and for war, they're matching this word for word, Michael.
Well, that's right. But, Bill, here's the key piece. The best way, the best path to peace is through economic pressure on China as well and on North Korea as well. They are not going to willingly just give up this program, and we have to maintain that pressure until the North Koreans make a meaningful concession. You know, the best way to avoid war is through diplomatic and economic pressure, and so I think this administration is spot on its policy.
Okay, does any of that change, though, Michael?
Well, look, I think you're going to see a continuing dialing up of the pressure. You're going to see the administration start to move forward with secondary sanctions on Chinese firms that are continuing to do business with the North Koreans.
But Michael, we've been down this road time and again. It seems like we come back to the same points repeatedly, and nothing has changed.
Well, that's actually, I think that's a little bit of a misperception. The sanctions have been on North Korean firms. We have never truly implemented secondary sanctions on Chinese firms. There is some fear that that could actually start a trade war with the Chinese retaliating against American firms. Right, but I'll take that. But I'll take that over a shooting war any day, and that's the key piece that has to move forward.
So you
it's
really
China that can end this.
Got it. You really see a different. You see an escalation of the pressure on China and in turn North Korea.
Oh, there's absolutely an escalation. If you just remember, just back to the UN Security Council a few months ago, the Chinese ordered all of its banks to stop doing business. You also had Kim Jong-un in his New Year's Day speech announce to his people that they're under the maximum amount of pressure that they've ever been under. The North Koreans are feeling the heat here, but that's exactly when they start to extend the olive branch to try to get the South Koreans to sit down and relieve that pressure, and that's where Mattis Tillerson and President Trump have to keep their foot on the gas.
That's really good analysis, Michael Waltz. Thank you for being here today. Appreciate that. Out of Florida today in Jacksonville. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Bill.
Damascus, Syria, experiencing one of its deadliest days in 3 years as dozens of women and children there are killed by government forces. What we know about the airstrikes.
Also reorganizing regions, why Pennsylvania is changing its congressional districts. We'll tell you about the court fight that is looming there.
Plus, one of the highest paid actresses in Hollywood, how she says she plans to fix democracy. We'll have more on that in just a moment.
Viewed as one of the nation's most gerrymandered states. Here's the updated version. Now, this will go into effect for the state's upcoming primary, May 15th. Talk already is that the new district alignment will help Democrats on the edge they need, that they're looking for. Lawmakers on the Republican side will challenge this map in federal court, so don't think this is a done deal just yet. Stay tuned.
A Fox News alert. It was a deadly day in Damascus. Government airstrikes killing 98 people on Monday, 20 of them children. It happened in the rebel-held suburbs of the capital, Damascus. Connor Powell's live in our Mideast newsroom. Connor, a human rights group says this was the worst day since 2015.
Yes, Sandra, absolutely brutal pictures and reports coming out of Syria the last couple days. I'll warn our viewers, some of the pictures that are about to pop up on your screen are extremely disturbing. The Assad regime, backed by Russia, has just unloaded on the main rebel-held area outside of Damascus. Eastern Ghouta, as the area is known, has faced an intense bombing campaign for weeks now. Hundreds have been killed, but The Assad regime has intensified the shelling in recent days, and at least 98 people, including dozens of children and women, have been killed, adding to the awful situation for the some 400,000 Syrians living there. The United Nations says that there is a severe shortage of food, water, and basic supplies. The French Foreign Ministry is saying the bombing is a serious violation of international law. But like Sandra, we've seen the last few years, there is a real disagreement about what to do. The Assad regime is backed by Iran and Russia. Turkey really cares about the ambitions of the Kurds, and the Trump administration, like the Obama administration, doesn't really know what to do about the Assad regime and the war there against the rebels.
Connor Powell in Jerusalem for us. Thank you.
Well, 26 minutes past the hour now. The gun debate heating up on Capitol Hill. As you can expect, Democrats calling out Republicans the following way. Watch here.
There have been efforts, but let's be blunt. One party controls the floor in the Senate and the House. The Republicans determine what's going to get a vote.
So what happens next and what changes are in store? Carlos Curbelo out of Florida is next on that. So tackle.
Plus, one mistake leads to heartbreak.
9:30 New York. Check it out. There is the opening bell on Wall Street. Bit of a sell-off already. Oh, hang on. Okay, world's not falling apart. Markets opening up after the President's Day break of yesterday. Big board shows we're down 150 at the open here. 6-day winning streak, though, so we'll see whether or not we can.
That's the perspective
we
for
can
you.
keep a good 6-day winning streak. Do they get? They have withdrawal when the markets are closed. I get a sense there's a little bit of that on a
especially in this volatile environment. Yes, there's.
Or do they want a break?
A break is needed and wanted sometimes.
Yeah.
But back to business this morning. So we'll see how things go. Dow already down 134 points. Meanwhile, students in Florida continuing their rally, now taking their call for action on guns to the steps of the state capitol. Meanwhile, some Republican lawmakers calling for action.
At some point, we've got to say enough is enough. At some point, we as a society have got to come together and put a stop to this.
These are the things that have to be looked at, and action has to happen before. And look, you're never going to fix all of this, but common sense gun laws make sense.
One Florida Republican who is calling for the debate on gun laws to be brought to the House and Senate floors is Congressman Carlos Curbelo, and he joins me now. Congressman, thank you for joining us this morning. You are a Republican, and you are calling for more gun laws in this country. What bills specifically would you like to see come to the House floor?
That's right. Good morning from Miami, Sandra. Here in South Florida, we're still in mourning, and I imagine we will continue to do so for a long time because what happened here is unspeakable. It is very sad. And yes, a lot of people are calling for action, and we want this time to be different. We actually want meaningful action. Look, I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I think that we need to strengthen Second Amendment rights for responsible gun owners, but we clearly have to do more to make sure guns stay out of the hands of those who want to harm innocent people. So there's some very obvious steps that we can take. I'm supporting universal background check legislation to make sure every gun transfer is run through the NICS, the background check system. We simply cannot take risks anymore given the consequences that we've seen. I also support raising the minimum age. If an 18-year-old, a 19-year-old can't buy a handgun, oh, and by the way, they also can't buy a beer at a restaurant, why can they buy these powerful long guns that are capable of inflicting so much damage as we saw at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas last week? So I think these are some common sense steps, and there's more. Stephanie Murphy out of the Orlando area has a bill to allow the CDC to research gun violence in the context of public health. I think that makes sense too.
What reaction are you getting from your Republican colleagues when you call for these changes to gun laws?
There's a growing interest. A lot of Republicans are saying yes. Some of these changes are really common sense. They're not going to limit gun rights for responsible gun owners, and there's an appetite to really work together and get something done. I'll tell you, a lot of Republicans are frustrated because after the Las Vegas shooting, there was broad consensus and support in Washington, D.C., bipartisan to ban bump stocks. I filed that legislation. Everyone thought it was a good idea, and then nothing happened.
Right, and in recent days, we've heard Trey Gowdy say he would be willing to support that, and he was reluctant to talk about any changes following the shooting in Las Vegas, and so we've seen him sort of change his tune on that. Let me tell you what the thinking is of American people, according to the latest ABC Washington Post poll. Specifically, first off, not a surprise, 77% say Congress is not doing enough to prevent these mass shootings, and 62% say the same of President Trump. But here's what's intriguing. 77% said that they think more effective mental health screening and treatment could have prevented the shooting. So for those who say changes to gun laws will not stop someone who just wants to inflict harm on others, they'll find some other way to do that. How are you and how are members of Congress addressing this concern that's clearly one of the American people, mental health?
Well, the American people are right. We have to take a holistic approach to this gun violence issue, and the guns aren't the only problem. They're just one of the elements of this challenge that we're facing as a society, and we do have to invest more in mental health. We have to strengthen the NICS, the background check system, so that those who do have mental health disorders are accurately reported to the NICS system and can't gain access to these types of weapons. We also should invest more, and my colleague from Florida, Ted Deutsch, has a bill to invest more in school security, federal grant program to help schools harden their structures and make it more difficult for would-be killers to hurt our children. So this is not only about guns, but we cannot ignore the gun issue. And by the way, none of these solutions will 100% guarantee that these tragedies are prevented in the future, but it may prevent some, and it could mitigate others. And if we can save lives, this will all be worthwhile. So I hope Republican leadership and the president get behind some simple solutions that can help make all Americans safer.
We have heard the president in recent days speak out on this, and the White House is saying that he is open to some changes, specifically more extensive background checks. Have you, Congressman, had a chance? You represent the congressional district south of Parkland, where the shooting played out last week. Have you had a chance to speak to the president?
We have reached out to the White House, not to the president specifically, but I think the president should trust his instincts on this issue. I remember after the Pulse Club shooting in Orlando, just before the 2016 election, the president made some statements and even, I think, went and met with the NRA about sensible changes to our gun policies. I think it is his instinct to support some of these ideas, and today I invite him to do so because our country is demanding this, because there are a lot of young people in the state of Florida and throughout the country that are stepping up and speaking out, and they want to see action, and you know what? They're right.
It is really a tough issue, and Senator Marco Rubio makes that point, and he's basically saying that there's nothing that we could change today that would have prevented this attack, addressing the gun law debate that is happening in this country right now. Listen.
It is a tough issue because it is part of the reason why it is so hard to prevent these. It's because if someone decides that they are going to take it upon themselves to kill people, whether it's a political assassination of one person or the mass killing of many, if one person decides to do it and they're committed to that task, it is a very difficult thing to stop.
So, Congressman, what do you say to your Republican colleague in the Senate there, Marco Rubio?
I agree with him that it's a tough issue. I agree with him that there's no magical solution, panacea, that's going to solve this. But that doesn't mean that we can't take some common sense steps. After every one of these recent tragedies, I have filed legislation that would have made a difference. In the case of Pulse in Orlando, I filed legislation that would have prevented those who had been under an FBI investigation for ties to terrorism from having immediate access to guns. After the Las Vegas shooting, the bump stock ban, that would have at least mitigated that situation.
So there seems to be some real momentum here, Congressman. Do you think that we'll really see any change after this most recent mass shooting?
I think we will see some action. I had the chance to speak over the last few days with Speaker Ryan, with our Majority Whip, Steve Scalise, and I think that they understand that the American people and a lot of Republicans and obviously Democrats in Congress aren't willing to accept that this is the new normal, that every couple months we're going to wake up to news about a bunch of children being slaughtered at a school. So we need to take some action. We need to continue upholding the Second Amendment, protecting those who are doing the right thing by our gun laws. But inaction is just not an option this time.
Congressman Carlos Curbelo, I know your community and the communities just north of you are still reeling this morning. We thank you for coming on and sharing your views on all of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Got an update now. Breaking news from Washington now. Robert Mueller's special counsel office moments ago announcing new charges against a man accused of lying to investigators in the Russia matter. Alex Vander Swan is his name, charged in federal court for lying about interactions with former Trump aide Rick Gates. Department of Justice, remember, announcing last Friday 13 Russians indicted for their involvement, as well as 3 Russian businesses. And Catherine Herridge is working the story. We'll talk to her about what we are learning coming up in a matter of moments from Washington, D.C. Stay tuned for that. In the meantime, quick update now. Here we go. Checking in the Winter Games in South Korea. A victory for the U.S. men's hockey team, defeating Slovakia 5-1 last night. Now they face off with the Czech Republic in the quarterfinals. Stay tuned. Crushing loss for the skating duo Madison Chalk and Evan Bates during their ice program, the long program. Midway through, the skates clicked together. They went down. They finished the program, but finished 9th overall. You got to be a gut wrencher right there.
I got to tell you, I watched a lot.
What'd you watch?
I don't know. It was more Olympics than I had seen recently. Beautiful stuff, really.
Really good stuff.
Some good action.
The U.S. women play Canada for the gold medal in hockey. It's coming up in about 24 hours from now. So, USA, bring it home.
All right.
That's what we do. Yes.
Meanwhile, President Trump going on Twitter questioning actions of the Obama administration.
While I respect the motive in terms of the Obama administration, they didn't want to be seen as meddling. The American people had a right to know what was going on.
Why he believes President Obama should have acted on intelligence about Russian meddling.
We shall debate that. Also, a bride nearly missing her own reception. You will never guess the reason why.
Unbelievable.
Call the fire department, Sandra.
Oh my gosh. Her entire cocktail hour. The fire department pried open the doors but couldn't get her out, forcing her to wait on a technician. She was stuck in that elevator for 45 minutes. The couple took it in stride. Reason to celebrate, after all, saying it's going to make for a great wedding memory.
You know what the groom said? You know what the groom said? Come on, honey, you can come up with something better than that, can't you? The elevator, 45 minutes, the fire department.
You have to think if he was thinking, maybe this just isn't meant to be.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Well, we're glad that they were able to.
So live happily ever after. 15 minutes before the hour.
I've said all along that I thought the Obama administration should have done more. At that time, we couldn't get the Obama administration to acknowledge the Russian interference. They were very wary of appearing to be putting their hand on the scale in the election. Now, they did make an acknowledgement the following month, but I don't think that was sufficient.
So that was Adam Schiff with what some believe is a different tone as President Trump questions the actions of the previous administration as well. He's asking, what did the Obama team do about Russian meddling? Intelligence shows the Russian activities began as early as 2014, at least, I would add. Josh Holmes, former chief of staff to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Marie Harf, former State Department spokeswoman and Fox News contributor with me now. And Marie, you know, you were not in the Bed Bath & Beyond yesterday on 6th Avenue. I thought it was you, and it was just a mirage. You're in Washington.
My doppelganger. Good morning.
So, Josh, we're having a bit of a redo yet again on this. Yeah. There are questions about John Brennan. There are questions about what the CIA, what the DNI, what everybody was doing back in 2014, 15, and 16. Now, how's the Obama team going to address that?
Well, you know, what I think is particularly galling here is that if you were to listen to some of those players that you just named over the last 6-8 months, they would have you believe that the entire Russian, quote-unquote, collusion investigation started and began and ended within the confines of the Trump campaign. And what we've now come to find out through the Mueller indictments over the last month is this has been going on since 2014. So I think it's a legitimate question, beyond a legitimate question, to ask what in the world they've been doing.
Well,
for
Marie,
the last
we
2
know
years.
that President Obama said to Vladimir Putin 2 months before the election, cut it out. Was that the extent of it?
It wasn't. And President Obama and John Kerry, my former boss, and others confronted Russia repeatedly over this. And we did take steps publicly before the election. We came out and named and shamed Russia so voters would know what was going on. And we eventually expelled dozens of diplomats.
I don't quite recall that. Just refresh my memory. Specifically, what was said?
In terms of publicly,
yes.
The Obama administration released before the election the assessment that Russia was meddling. It referenced hacking, but a lot of that was overshadowed the exact same day by the Access Hollywood tape, if you remember. But look, the bigger point here is, Bill, we can have a legitimate debate about why we didn't do more. And there were good reasons. We were concerned about Russian escalation. We were concerned about being partisan. We also had a Republican candidate at the time, Donald Trump, who was on this campaign speeches saying, Russia, please interfere, please hack Hillary Clinton, and please release those emails. So we were confronting a candidate who was actually encouraging Russia.
Wonder, I think this is very important.
That's a fact.
I think it's very important. We need to figure all this out, okay? And all that's going to come in time. But, Josh, no votes were changed. Hillary Clinton did not go to Wisconsin. She went to Western Michigan in the closing days of the campaign. She did not inspire African Americans in the city of Milwaukee or the city of Detroit. Maybe people just did not like her message.
Yeah, I think it's important to silo off these two things, right? Everybody has sort of conflated the election with this Russian interference. The election itself, there's absolutely no evidence that any votes were changed, as you said, Bill. But the Russian interference is real, and it dates back to 2014, and it's something that we really got to get a hold on. What is extremely concerning to me is that for 2 years, we went through a basic understanding that they were trying to do what they were going to do, and the Obama administration didn't get around to even acknowledging it until October of 2016.
Newt Gingrich put a fine point on that a bit earlier today. Just listen here. Here's Gingrich, the former speaker.
There's a long stretch in there where either the system broke down or we have a much deeper need to rebuild our security system. And this is not about Obama personally, but that whole structure, you have to say to yourself, if it was as big as Mueller seems to think it was, somebody should have noticed.
Marie, I know you take exception to that because you think you did notice, but, one Friday afternoon message probably is not enough in hindsight.
Well, there was debates about this bill inside the administration at the time, and I am happy to have that conversation. We were trying to strike the right balance between confronting Russia and not appearing to be partisan during a presidential election.
You thought she was going to win, didn't you,
But
Marie?
the bigger, I think everyone thought, Bill, we all thought she was going to win. We all did. But here, wait, the bigger point.
You thought this was a walk-in, right?
But look, we all thought Hillary was going to win. But the bigger point is where we are today. Donald Trump refuses to implement the sanctions that Congress just passed overwhelmingly against Russia. Donald Trump has done nothing to confront Russia over this, and he has done nothing to make sure it doesn't happen again.
On that
we
point,
know they're trying to do it again right now.
On that point, we'll ask the White House in 40 minutes. Thank you, Marie. Thank you,
Sounds
Josh.
great.
You guys come
Thanks,
on
Bill.
back, okay? Thank you for your time today. Sandra.
Thank you.
Fines and jail time. The strict punishment one state is proposing for those who try to pass off their pets as service animals.
Also from actress to activist. What do you think, Sandra? Let's change democracy. The Oscar winner Jennifer Lawrence saying that she plans to fix the system. How? We'll find out in moments.